Welcome back to our camp YouTube channel. Today we're standing in front of a bunch of cedar trees, which is the topic of today's video. So, cedar trees are coniferous, which means that they consist of needles and cones. So the cones hold the seeds to make new trees, and the needles are kind of flat and they aren't too pointy on cedar trees. So these behind us are white cedars. So cedar trees help with the stabilization of banks, and they help prevent erosion because of the intricate root patterns and the amount of water that they absorb. They are also found to be about 100 to 130 feet tall when they're fully matured.
Cedar trees are reported to live around 150 years, and there are some that can live up to 300 or more years. They typically thrive in temperatures above negative 25 degrees Celsius. And along the Niagara Escarpment here in Ontario, there are some cedars reported to live over 700 years.
Okay, as you could see before, we were talking about how these are coniferous trees. So here are the cones, which hold the seeds, and these are the needles that we were talking about. So these ones are very flat and they aren't pointy like they would be on a Christmas tree. So there are two types of cedars in Ontario. So the first one is a white cedar, which are what we have behind us, and the next one is actually a red cedar, which are not actually cedars. They're actually from the juniper group. So in Ontario, they also have a fairly slow to medium growth rate, so they grow about 13 to 24 inches per year in height.
Yeah, so if you can come in closer, we can see here the way we identify them is based on their bark and their leaves. So the bark here we can see is a reddish brown in color, which we see here on the leaves, and then again here on the branches it's a bit more dark. And when we look at the actual leaves, they're very, very thin and flat, and they are a greenish yellow color, and they're very dull. So that is the way we identify them. And another fun fact about these is that they're very rich in vitamin C, so they can be used to make tea, which is what we're going to do next.
Okay, so we took off a small branch off of our white cedar. So this is what we're going to be making tea with. So if you want to make more tea, you'd obviously take more. We're just going to make a small amount. So what we're first going to do is we obviously took it off. So we're going to give it a good rinse under the tap to make sure that there's nothing just like sitting on the surface. And then it's going to go into boiling water, which would kill any bacteria or anything, so we don't need to worry about that. So, onto the stove. Okay, so now we're over by the stove. So the next step in making our tea is we're going to take off all of the needles. So we want to remove any needles that are like really brown or dead. So we're just ripping off these pieces, so we don't want the actual stick to go in. So we're just going to rip these off and put them into the pot, just like this, to get ready. Wonderful. And once we have ripped off all of these, for this amount of cedar, you normally do 1 cup of cedar and 2 cups of water. So we don't quite have a cup, so I'm just going to put 1 cup of water in because we have about a half a cup of cedar. So, wonderful. And then we're just going to put it on the stove and let it boil. And I'm going to put the rest of these in. Okay, so we're going to let this pot of water and cedar boil for about 10 to 15 minutes. And once it starts to turn a little bit of a yellowish color, that's when we know it's ready. And we're just going to keep mixing it about every 5 minutes. As you can see, it's quite a rolling boil now, so this is about where it wants to be. So we just mix it up a little, and as you can see, the water is also starting to turn a little bit yellow, which is what you're looking for.
Alright, so while we wait for our cedar tea to finish, I'm going to share a few verses from the Bible that talk about cedar trees and their importance. The first one is Isaiah chapter 9 verse 10, which says, "The bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will replace them with cedars." So in this verse, it's talking about how something is going to be rebuilt stronger. So it shows the durability and the strength of cedar trees compared to sycamores, which is saying that they are basically stronger and more durable and will be built to last better. So the second passage that I'm going to be sharing is from Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 22 and 23, which says, Thus says the Lord God, I will take also one of the highest branches of the high cedar and set it out. I will crop off from the topmost of its young twigs a tender one, and will plant it on a high and prominent mountain. On the mountain height of Israel I will plant it, and it will bring forth boughs and bear fruit, and be a majestic cedar. Under it will dwell birds of every sort, in the shadow of its branches they will dwell. Alright, so this passage says that cedar trees are majestic, and it also talks about how it will bear fruit and how there will be birds of every sort. So this is basically explaining the importance of cedar trees and how kind of grand and highly regarded they are.
Okay, so now the tea is finished up. It's been boiling for about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to pour it through the strainer to make sure that none of the leaves get in. And there we are. Tea is ready.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you were able to learn something new about cedar trees, and we'll see you all next time.